I recently went on a family trip to Florida, and as part of our itinerary, we decided to spend a few nights in a hotel that was rumored to be haunted. My family, consisting of my wife, my 2 children, and myself, were skeptical at first, but as soon as we checked in, strange things started to happen, making us question whether the rumors were true. The first night, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling as if someone was watching me. When I opened my eyes, I saw a ghostly figure standing at the end of my bed. I rubbed my eyes and it disappeared. I thought it was just a nightmare, but the next morning my daughter told me she saw the same figure in her room. This was just the beginning of our haunted hotel experience. The rest of the trip was filled with eerie experiences. Every time we entered a new room, we would hear strange noises and see unexplained movements. The curtains would move on their own, and the doors would creak open and shut. We even saw apparitions of ghostly children running down the hallway. These ghostly apparitions seemed to follow us wherever we went in the hotel, making it difficult to shake the feeling that we were being watched. One night, we decided to have dinner in the hotel's restaurant. While we were eating, the lights flickered and the cutlery started to shake on its own. We quickly finished our meal and ran back to our rooms, where we heard strange whispers and footsteps. We were all so scared that we huddled together in one room for the rest of the night, not daring to sleep. We tried to leave the hotel the next day, but every time we tried to book another room, we were told that there were no vacancies. We were trapped in this haunted hotel, and our fears only escalated as the days went by. On the last night of our trip, we were woken up by a loud crash. We went to investigate and found that all of our belongings had been thrown out of the room. We were scared and didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the ghostly figure appeared again, but this time it pointed towards the window. When we looked outside, we saw that the sun was rising, and the ghostly figure disappeared. We finally checked out of the hotel and never looked back. After our haunted hotel experience, we did some research and found out that the hotel was built on the site of an old mental asylum. Many years ago, the patients were treated inhumanly, and it is said that their spirits still haunt the hotel to this day. This explained the ghostly apparitions we had seen and the strange occurrences we had experienced. I was one of a group of high school friends who had gathered in an old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. We had played with a Ouija board before, using it as a tool to scare each other and our friends. But this night was different. One of our friends, cousin who was new to the game, suggested we give it a try. We'd all gathered around the board, placing our hands on the planchette and asking it to communicate with us. To our surprise, the board spelled out words that were not only accurate but also historically significant to our town, information we had never known or cared about before. The spirit claimed to be a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 30s and was buried there in an unmarked grave. We were taken aback by the level of detail and consistency in the answers, but still skeptical, we all assumed one of us was trying to pull a prank. However, as the night wore on, the events that took place left us all feeling uneasy. The board spelled out the word knock, and after a moment of silence, a rapid knocking sound could be heard coming from the window right next to us. The lights were on outside, and yet there was no one to be seen. I quickly realized that something was amiss. We were no longer playing a game. We were dealing with a malevolent entity that was beyond our understanding. The storm outside raged on as we tried to escape the old farmhouse, but we found ourselves trapped. The knocking continued, growing louder and more intense as the spirit seemed to close in on us. We huddled together, realizing that we had awakened something that we couldn't control. We were in over our heads, and there was no turning back. The Ouija board had opened a door to the other side, and now we were at the mercy of the malevolent entity that had come through. The storm continued to rage on as we clung to each other, uncertain of our fate. We never touched that Ouija board again, and the events of that night remained forever etched in our minds, as a haunting reminder of what can happen when one plays with the unknown. The next morning, we all felt shaken and disturbed by the events of the previous night. We couldn't shake off the feeling of unease and terror that had gripped us as the Ouija board spelled out the words of the malevolent entity. The idea that we had made contact with a spirit beyond our understanding was frightening, and we all felt as though we had stumbled upon something that we were not meant to see. We also learned that the 10-year-old boy who had communicated with us through the Ouija board was a real person who had lived in the farmhouse during the 30s. He had died of a mysterious illness, and his body was buried on the property in an unmarked grave. It seemed that his spirit was one of many that had been trapped by the disturbance of the Native American burial ground. The realization that we had played with something that was beyond our understanding and control made us question the use of the Ouija board. We realized that we had been foolish to think that we could control the forces of the spirit world. The Ouija board was not a game. It was a dangerous tool that could open doors to the unknown, unleashing spirits and entities that were beyond our control. From that day on, we never spoke of the Ouija board again. The events of that stormy night stayed with us as a haunting reminder of what can happen when one dabbles in the unknown. We learned to respect the power of the spirit world and to never underestimate the dangers of playing with forces that were beyond our control. I was on a solo trip to Japan, seeking adventure and a change of pace from my mundane life. So I found myself walking into a dense, ancient forest, surrounded by towering trees and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. But as I ventured deeper, a creeping feeling of unease began to settle in my bones. The whispers started as mere murmurs in the distance. At first, I dismissed them as the wind. But as I continued on, the whispers grew clearer and more distinct, like ghostly voices speaking in a language I could not comprehend. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Then I saw it. A dark, sinister shadow darting behind me, as if trying to remain unseen. I spun around, searching for the source of the whispers, but there was no one there. Just the dense forest and the voices, which now seemed to come from all directions. I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear, as the whispers grew louder, cackling with laughter, taunting me in that unknown tongue. The shadow loomed larger, surrounding me in darkness, and I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. In that moment, I realized that I was now alone in the forest. Something was there, something evil, and it was closing in on me. I was caught in its grasp, a prisoner in its realm of darkness and fear. I don't remember how long I was trapped in that haunting forest, but when I finally escaped, I was never the same. The whispers still haunt my dreams, and the shadow still lingers in my mind, a chilling reminder of the terror I experienced in that Japanese forest. After I stumbled out of the forest, I was met by a small village on the outskirts. The villagers looked at me with fear and concern, as if they knew of the evil that lived in the heart of the forest. I tried to explain what had happened to me, but my words came out as a jumbled mess, and they looked at me with confusion. Eventually, an old man approached me and listened to my story. His eyes widened in fear as I spoke, and he told me that the forest was known to be haunted by the spirits of those who had died within its boundaries. The villagers believed that the evil entity that I encountered was one of these spirits, seeking revenge for some past wrongdoing. I was in a state of shock, struggling to process what had just happened to me. The old man offered to let me stay in the village for a few days, and I gratefully accepted. Over the next few days, I learned more about the history of the forest and the villagers' beliefs about the spirits that lived within. I also spoke with other travelers who had encountered similar experiences, and the tales of terror only served to further unsettle me. As much as I wanted to leave the village and never look back, I felt drawn to the forest and the answers it held. I knew that I had to face my fear and return to the heart of the forest to find the truth about what truly dwelled within. I had always been fascinated with ghosts and paranormal investigations, so when my aunt invited my cousins and I for a sleepover at her old mansion in Yorkshire in England in 2004, I was beyond excited. This was the perfect opportunity to experience the creepy and eerie atmosphere that only an old, haunted house could provide. As we arrived, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease wash over me. The mansion was massive and imposing, with creaky floorboards and musty-smelling walls. It was as if time had stood still, with antique paintings and old family photos adorning the walls. But there was something strange about the paintings. They seemed to follow me with their eyes wherever I went. Determined to uncover the truth about the rumors surrounding the house, my cousin Obi and I decided to explore. As we made our way through the maze of hallways and rooms, we stumbled upon an old trunk in the attic. The trunk was filled with dusty books and yellowed letters, but the most intriguing item was a journal written by a former inhabitant of the house. The journal detailed the story of a young girl who had lived in the house and had been haunted by a malevolent spirit. As we read the journal, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered, objects moved on their own, and we heard strange noises coming from the darkness. Obi was shivering. We were frightened, but also captivated by the strange occurrences. We decided to spend a night in the attic, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghostly spirit. The night was long and filled with terror. We heard footsteps echoing in the halls, doors creaking open and closed, and whispers coming from the shadows. I even felt a cold breath on my neck at one point. But the most terrifying moment of all came when the ghostly figure of a young girl appeared before us. She simply looked at us, then vanished into the darkness. We were too scared to move, but eventually we mustered up the courage to leave the attic and make our way back to our room. The rest of the night was a blur, with all of us huddled together in bed, listening to the creaking of the floorboards and the whispers of the ghostly spirit. We finally fell asleep, exhausted from the long and terrifying night. In the morning, we told my aunt what had happened, and she was shocked. She confirmed that the house was indeed haunted by the spirit of a young girl who had died in the house many years ago. She also told us that the ghostly figure we had seen was most likely a manifestation of the young girl's spirit. From that day on, I never looked at haunted houses the same way again. The sleepover at my aunt's house in England was a truly unique and haunting experience, and one that I would never forget. It had refined my fascination for the paranormal and left me with a newfound respect for the unknown. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the memory of it still haunts me. I often find myself thinking back to that creepy old mansion and the ghostly spirit that still haunts its halls. I hope one day to return to that place, to unravel the mysteries that lie within, and to once again face the fear that I had encountered that night. My aunt has since passed and the house remains vacant. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.